Welcome back to another episode of A Gift from Adversity. My name is Juri Love. I'm your host. Thank you very much for tuning in. Before I introduce today's guest, I want to introduce my book, which is the same title as this podcast. It's called A Gift from Adversity by Juri, Juri, Love, and it's available on Amazon. So please check it out. The subtitle of the book is Overcoming Sexual Abuse, Domestic Violence, Bullying, and Homelessness. This is a book about my life, and you can check it out. Today, we are recording episode 152, and I appreciate you checking it out and listening and tuning in. So let's invite our guest. Hi, Eric. Thank you very much for coming in to A Gift from Adversity.
Hi, Jerry. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here. Looking forward to it.
Great. So let's start introducing yourself. Please tell our audience your name and then what you do, and if you have any website or social media you want to promote.
Sure. Thank you. So my name is Eric Mazzeo. I work for the city of. I was a construction worker before this. Now I work for the city of Everett out of the Youth Development and Enrichment Department. I am the Assistant Director of Youth Substance Use Prevention, and I'm a person in recovery myself. So I get to go around to the schools and have programs at the rec center where I talk to the kids and try to help them out to go down the best path possible. And yeah, so any social medias would be, Facebook's my name, Eric Mazzeo. Instagram, I have two Instagrams. I have my personal Instagram, which is Eric Mazzeo, but also emaz86. And then I have my work Instagram, which is also Eric Mazzeo and Eric Mazzeo Youth. And that's Eric_Mazzeo_youth. And so I'm excited to be here, looking forward to it. And this is a great opportunity to be able to share these things with you. And I love everything you're doing with the podcast, Jerry. And, thank you for asking me.
Wonderful. Thank you. So before we get started, Mazzeo spells Mazzeo. So please follow his social. So let's dive into our first question, which is the adversity. So can you tell our audience, what was your adversity?
Yeah, so my adversity for me, I noticed at an early age, I was always uncomfortable with myself, and I would do things or act out to gain your approval, right? To gain the approval of others, because I had things going on inside of me that I just didn't know how to process, right? I was living in fear. I had all these anxieties and these things. And for me, it was the only way that I could cope with that is if I took a drink or a drug, it would be I'm at peace, right? I'm at ease and comfort. So my adversity was absolute substance abuse at an early age. I mean, it was normal at 12 years old for me to be drinking and smoking weed with my family and whatnot. And I don't look at oh yeah, what's the reason? Were you born with it? Are you an alcoholic, an addict? Are you born with it? Are you not? I don't look at it like that. I think it's one of the, and my parents, my father's my best friend now. And it's one of those things where they did the best with what they knew, but if you know better, you do better. And at some point you need to break the cycle. Right. So I don't blame anybody for the way my life turned out or whatever, but yeah, it was a constant roller coaster. And, thank God, October 28th, I just got 6 years in recovery where I haven't found it necessary to put any mind and mood altering substances in my body. And I'm very grateful for that because, like I said, it would be an on and off thing for so long where I would struggle with it and I didn't know what to do. So my adversity is definitely substance abuse. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and honesty. So you said October 28th was your 6 years of recovery.
Yeah.
Before we talk about the tools and everything, and then you mentioned about anxiety, and you mentioned about maybe wanting some attention, and then maybe environment thing. So when you look back at your childhood, like you kind of mentioned it quick. What was your anxiety? Like, what do you remember any of the fear or anxiety? What was it about school? Was it about bullying, or was it about like race? What was it about, you think?
I think maybe I don't know. I don't know. I can't really pinpoint. I was always like such a huge mummy's boy, and it's like I stayed back in kindergarten because I wasn't only because I wasn't mature enough. I would cry when my mom would leave, and I just had like the anxiety of like I didn't know what to do. I think I like didn't know how to operate on my own. I mean, I get it, I'm a kid, but like I didn't know what to do or like even like how to like go about anything or even like life in general at an early age. Never mind an adult, but I don't know if I can pinpoint exactly what it was. Um, but I was just always so uncomfortable with myself, and I would always like act out to try to, gain approval from others or whatever, or just like be like what I would think would be like accepted, right? So like I don't know if I mean it wasn't like I didn't get bullied or anything like that. I wish I could tell you exactly what it was, like if I knew. But there was always just like some fear there, or like I just the thing too is like I for so long I just didn't feel good enough. I don't know why. Like I just didn't, I didn't feel like accepted by anybody. I didn't feel good enough. I was in fear of like what you thought of me, and I think that that's one of the things that I try to talk to the kids about now, especially. I there's a lot of work that I do, and but the main thing is like if you can help out a child, I mean, it's a life changing experience and it's a beautiful thing. But I try to talk to them about like it's okay. Like I grew up on like this stigma of like real men don't cry and like you don't share your feelings and like what, but that's false, right? Like now I know I live my life of like real people do cry, like real people do talk about their feelings, talk about what's going on, because like if I want to be the best version of myself, how am I going to get help for something, right? If I'm not talking about it. So I talk about these things and I share these things because I want them to know that like it's okay to like it's normal, not that it's normal to like have fears, to have anxieties, to like be angry sometimes, but we have to be able to like process these things. But like back to your question, I don't know if I could really tell you exactly what it was, like the reason on like why like I felt like that or anything. I just always was just so uncomfortable and didn't like feel like myself. And then like I said, when I started like drinking and taking drugs, it's like it was false obviously, but like I felt like I'm complete, right? Like I'm okay now. Like I can go out and communicate with the world. I can go out and operate with the world and not only be comfortable with myself, but think that I'm like doing good at it. I hope that might have answered it a little bit.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Um, Sometimes, Eric, like I am survivor of many things, and then I just didn't even know what it was called, PTSD, anything. So I really understand, like when you are in the middle of a storm, you just don't know what it is.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. Is like you don't even know what to call it, and I think a lot of it would just have to do with me just being uncomfortable with myself, and like that's what it was. It's like you said, I love that too. When you're in the middle of the storm, you don't know what it is, and it's like the thing of you don't know how far you can go in life or like where your life can take you until you really give yourself a chance. Like what I mean is, even a year or two ago, if you would have asked me that like I would be working for the city that I grew up in, that like I grew up in Everett, and I was a really good football player, and I went from being in the papers for playing football to legit right after being in the papers for like the arrest log. But that's where like my addiction, my alcoholism brought me. And then now like I'm in the papers again for doing positive things in the community, right? For like being out there and trying to help out our youth. But I would have never thought that like this would all be possible, like with like recovery or anything like that. And even early on in recovery, even now still, and I'm the one saying it now, is you hear like these people come in and people, when you hear people's stories and they talk about like, oh, you don't know where your life can take you, and it's so beautiful, and like it's true though. It's true. We just got to give ourselves a chance and be able to kind of, if you will, like get out of my own way. Like, because that was the thing too, is like I thought I thought I was doomed. Like I literally thought, and I was, not only did I think it, I was content with the fact that this is how I'm gonna die. Like this is what was made for me. This is how my life is supposed to be. I'm gonna die drinking and using drugs. And not only did I think that, or was I didn't want anything else. I didn't want any, like I could never like understand. I used to honestly think like, how do people go through life not drinking or taking drugs? Like how are they happy? Right? Because that's what my mind was, right? And that was what I like thought happiness was, right? It's like, but it was like this false illusion. And then like, I started to like take suggestions and talk to people and be open about what was going on, and things changed fast, drastically too.
So Eric, let's talk about some substance. So I recently wrote an article about opioid crisis, and then about 18,000 people death toll since 2015 in Massachusetts. And then it's an opioid, and there's a fentanyl and different drugs coming into states, and then like nationwide. But when you were growing up, maybe it was different, not as poisonous as like but like how were you getting these substance? Like for instance, like was that from your peers or parents or like friend? Like what? How is it accessible to youth like that?
Yeah. So it was around everywhere. Like when I grew up, it was right around the time when the OxyContin got really big, right? And we didn't know what it like back then. There wasn't like fentanyl and stuff. Now fentanyl's in everything, right? And you could die like from the littlest bit. But back then, like there was a big time like OxyContin era, and I remember, and they were just around. Like this is how we grew up. I remember playing football in high school, and we'd be beating the team, and we'd be on the sidelines talking about like who am I splitting an oxy with after the game. That's what we knew, right? And this is like what we thought. We thought we were just like partying, right? And we were just like getting messed up. Little did I know that like where it was going to take me, And then I remember when I was addicted and I was like laying on the couch and my legs were shaking from the addiction. And this disease runs rampant in my family, and somebody asked me like, hey, I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, well, have you been doing the oxys? And I'm like, yeah. How do I get rid of this? And they said, well, you do one. Like you like, because that's what they knew, right? And again, it's like, if you know better, you do better. But what they knew was like how you get rid of it is you do one. It takes away the pain, it takes away the shakes, and then it was like I was just off and running, right? So it was available everywhere though, like everywhere, like. And I have a lot of friends, family members that died from this, whether it be like overdoses or suicides or whatever it may be, whether alcoholism, addiction. But it was so accessible, so accessible. It was like you didn't have to go far, you didn't have to look far. If you were going to a party, they were probably there. You can, if you just ask around a little bit, and like that's the thing, that's a scary thing, because nowadays too, it's like the same thing, especially probably even more because like with the social media and like everything's so accessible. Everybody has a computer at their hand, you know what I mean? Or you can call somebody at the drop of a dime. So back then it was like everything was just everywhere. It was so easy to get it. And not only was it so easy to get it, like we just thought that like we were having fun, right? Like we just thought it was cool, like we're having fun, not knowing that it was gonna not only cause a lot of pain in my life, but definitely take off a lot of years of my life, right? Because for so long, I was in and out of detox, I was in and out of jail, and like I didn't know. Like I didn't even know how, like, what's going on. Like I thought this was normal. Like what's going on with me? I used to honestly think that every person, every man goes to jail at least once in their life. Like this is what I thought, because I looked up to people when I was younger, the ones that like went to prison, right? Went to jail. Like I would look up to these guys, and I don't know why I thought like that. I don't know why I thought or like what brought that on, but everything was just so accessible and at our fingertips at all times.
Like say for instance, alcohol, we do card like 21, and then you have to show ID to get alcohol. But how are you getting alcohol at like such a young age?
Oh, we would, somebody's brother, sister, cousin, whatever, or like even we had people just in the neighborhood that like they'd be around, and back then it would be like, hey, if you bought me a 40 ounce, I'll buy you whatever liquor you want. So we would buy that person a 40, and they would go into the liquor store and get us whatever it may be, a 30 rack or whatever, a bottle. So it was just so accessible, right? Because we had friends and cousins and even family members that were 21, 22, and I think back then it wasn't looked at as much as like an issue, or it could cause something. Like, it wasn't abnormal for me to be like drinking with my family. It wasn't abnormal for me to go over to my friend's house and be drinking with their family, or like have somebody's even parents buy it for us, because it wasn't like looked at like that, because that's probably what they knew. But like, yeah, we would just have people around the neighborhood that like where to go. And like, if you want liquor and you can't buy liquor at 16, 17, 18, whatever, right? You know this person's going to be here. And if you buy him a 40 ounce, you're good. They'll buy you whatever.
So you mentioned earlier that this addiction kind of felt like that completed you, and then that completion, like, how did you feel? Like, say, did you feel like you gained a control when you are doing the substance, or because of your kind of brain was wired a little bit differently, and then you kind of felt good? And then, sometimes when you are addicted, like in the middle of the storm, you don't know, but now you're out of that world, and then looking back, what do you think the satisfaction and the completion that you mentioned, that you felt completed in a way, was it about?
I think it was more like, I don't know if it might have been some sort of like a control thing, right? Like I know what's going on with me. I can control even like to the point of like how I feel, but it was like a ease and comfort, right? Like, it was like I take a drink or a drug, and it's like, now I'm alive, right? Like, now I'm alive. Now I've arrived, right? Like, now Eric's here, right? Like, because before, like, without that, I would I'd have these things inside of me that I didn't know how to deal with, how to process them. I still had them inside of me once I drank or used drugs, but it was so much easier to deal with. They were like blocked. They were pushed away. It wasn't like I wasn't, because I was living like this false illusion of like who I was, right? So I think it was like having that ease and comfort and feeling like this is what life's about, right? Like, oh my God, I've been missing out on this for so long. Like, why haven't I done this sooner? Why didn't anybody tell me about this? So it was kind of like, yeah, absolutely a control thing of like, I can control how I feel now, right? Like, but it's really like I'm out of control, right? So it brought me to a place where like, yeah, I can control myself, but now I'm like out of control, right? Because now I'm doing so much, I don't know where to get it. Now I'm doing things that are like, gonna cause me to go to jail and get in trouble. So like my life became out of control, and I didn't know where to stop, how to stop. And again, I didn't. There was times I didn't even want to stop, and then there was times where like I did want to stop, but I didn't know how to. But it was more like having that like sense of like, wow, I've been missing this.
And then how about your friend group? Like, say, your peers, like, obviously that maybe you're working or maybe you're hanging out, compared to now that you've been sober for like 6 years. Like, when you look back about peer pressure, especially when you're younger, and then like, how do you describe that? Was there any portion of it that contributed by peer pressure?
Yeah, of course. Like, I was a big like, and I still, one of my character defects still to this day is like I'm a people pleaser, right? Because I love people. I want to make everybody happy. I want to show up at everything. I want everybody to like me, right? And like, it's getting better, not that like, because I think it's BS when people are like, oh, I don't care what people think about me. Like, I think everybody to some point cares what people think. I'm like, whatever. I don't want to speak for everybody. I care. I care. So it's like I was doing things, and like, yeah, the peer pressure was absolutely there, right? Because I would like, want to fit in, want to think I'm cool, whatever. And like now it's just I live a totally like when it's like a 180-degree shift. I live a totally different life. I don't hang out with anybody that does any of those things. I only have like good people in my life that want the best for me. I don't communicate. Not that like I'll help anybody, like I try to help anybody, even if they want to, like, try to get off drugs, alcohol, whatever. But like, my friend group, I'm not, you know, on a constant basis, like people that I call or whatever, they're majority of them are people that are sober as well. And if they're not, so like that's okay. It's not like I'm against anybody just because I can't drink or use drugs or whatever. Like I'm not against, or I'm not gonna, I got family and friends that like still can like drink and not like ruin their lives because they go out and drink, like, and I love them dearly, and but they know, like they respect the fact that like I don't do it anymore, and they're proud of me, So like my friend group is totally different. I don't fall into that peer pressure trap no more. I just don't really associate with anybody that's like, on that type of wavelength of like, using substances. So it's very beneficial when you have people around you that are just like want the best for you and you genuinely know they do.
So unfortunately, I lost a friend from college to alcohol addiction and then blood clots. Um, how was your health when it was probably the worst? Say blood pressure, any kidney problems. Do you recall any of your body deteriorating from this substance?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the main thing was like I didn't care, so I didn't take care of myself. I wasn't going to the doctors. I wasn't doing, and I could just feel it. Like I could just feel like weak, right? Like just weak, and like there's something going on, and like I don't know what it is, and I'm very lucky that nothing like major has happened. I'm very extremely, because technically, statistically, in like stats, whatever, people have different feel. I shouldn't be here, right? Like statistically, if you were to look up, like I shouldn't be here, and I'm super lucky that like nothing crazy has happened, but like absolutely, I could feel the effects of it, and I could, like it was yesterday. I can remember those like hungover days and the days you wake up and you got messed, and like I'm so grateful that I don't feel like that anymore. Like I don't have to worry about that because that's just it's horrible. It's legit horrible, and people have major health reasons. They die because too much alcohol, liver, whatever it may be, and or drugs, overdoses. And I'm very lucky. I'm very blessed that none of that has happened to me. I'm grateful for that.
Yes. And you kind of mentioned about jail time or something. Did you get in trouble with the law enforcement and stuff at some point when you were young?
Yeah, so my thing was like I would and I think of it now of like me being angry with myself. I was fighting a lot. Like I'd go out to bars or like with people, and I'm very protective of my friends, and I was fighting, just like fighting. I was very angry, but I think of it now of me being like very angry with myself and trying to take it out on others, right? So yeah, that sooner than later, like you go to court and you get put on probation. You're on probation, then you get like, you get locked up for the 30 days, the 60 days, the 90 days, and then like the most I did, I got a 2.5 year sentence, and I did a year and four. They told me I was in drug court at the time, and they told me if I complete the drug block at South Bay, they'd give me a revise and revoke, and they kept their word. So I did a year and about 4 months at South Bay, and it was over 10 years ago the last time that I went to jail, and yeah, I was in and out, just lost.
Wow. So I I'm very grateful that you are sharing this with me because sometimes I don't know who's listening to our podcast. And then again, the beautiful thing about podcasts is you never know who we are touching. And then I think the importance of the conversation that we're having right now is just like I said, when you're in the middle of the storm, you just can't identify. But now you are on the other end, that you kind of be able to see objectively and then be eloquently depict what had happened to you. So let's move on to the second part of the podcast, second question of the podcast, which is my favorite part of the podcast. So the question is, what are the tools that you use to overcome these challenges? And then Eric, before you share it with our audience, I just want to shout out to all the guests that came to our podcast and then shared their real life experience and tools that they use to overcome. What I really don't like about some people telling me what to do, it's with the compassion, but sometimes, like, those are not necessarily applicable because they've never been raped by a father or they've never been homeless. And then so this is a real story that you're sharing with us today. So Eric, my question is, what are the best tools, some of the top tools that you applied and it worked for you to be where you are right now?
I think the like key components were like I got honest. I got honest with myself. I got honest with others. I opened up, right? I got involved in a 12-step program. That legit saved my life, right? And like some people shy away from whatever. And I believe in God. I think of myself as more like a spiritual person than religious. Maybe it's just like I don't have a name to call that person, so I just say God, whatever. But I believe in the main thing. What I'm getting at is I believe in something bigger than myself, right? Like there's something out there bigger. But I got really involved in a 12-step program, and it saved my life. When I tell you, that same jail that I was just talking about that I was in over 10 years ago. Now on the fourth Wednesday of every month, I bring people into that jail to share the message, right? So that's like how much of a turnaround my life has become. I would have never even I would have never have thought that I would want to do those things, let alone do those things. Like, why would I want to go into jail and bring people there to try to help others, But I think the main thing is, I started to open up. I got honest, I hung around with people that had the same mindset as me, and I just really, I tried, because we never know what we could do until we give ourselves a fair shot. And getting involved in a 12-step program is what really saved my life. Like that saved my life tremendously, and like I have a sponsor. I go through, the step work. I do all that. I sponsor other guys, and it's amazing the outcome of like where my life has already come to right now. Even as far as like I would have never have thought that like somebody would ask me to be on like a podcast to share my story. You know what I mean? Like I could never imagine these things because I just couldn't get out of my own way. And then like I don't know what it was, like call it like higher power, whatever. I don't know, but it was just like I got to a point where it was like I have to try. I have to at least try to do better. I have to try to do the right thing. And like, what's the worst that's going to happen? I can always go back to drinking and using drugs, So like I was in and out of jail for so long, and I would get released from jail and, or detox and go to a halfway house, and I would go to the halfway house and I would go to these meetings, and I'm going for all the wrong reasons. But I'm meeting people from these meetings that are like from the same neighborhood or surrounding neighborhoods who drank and drugged how I drank and drugged, went through the things that I went through, and they were involved in the program, and they were like, hey, you need to do this, you need to go through the steps. And I would honestly think that like, nah, that can't, I wouldn't say it to them, but I didn't think that like I was worse than them or they were better than me. I just thought like I'm not that lucky, right? Like I'm, because we know what we did, we know what we've been through, we know how we feel. So I would always think like I'm not that lucky. I'm never gonna get that ease and comfort that these people talk about, right? And then I finally just said, you know what? Let me try. Let me try. I can always go back to drinking and using drugs. And I reached out to one of those gentlemen that would say that to me, like, hey, you got to do this. And, when you're ready, call me. He would always say, when you're ready, call me. And I called him, and he became my first sponsor. And he's one of my best friends to this day. He's like a brother to me. He saved my life. And the change was fast. It was very fast, and it's gotten so much better. Like, compared to like me being 6 years sober now in recovery to like even like last year or the year before, just everything gets so much better. And like, you never know what you're gonna want in life, or like it's gonna change, right? Like so it's gonna change over time. And I would have never like. People say, oh, my dream job, my dream. But if you could really like, because I'm very passionate about my recovery, and like I've coached football for kids for years, and I love helping kids. And if I could really say what my dream job would be, it would be like working with the youth about recovery, because I'm very passionate about I have it. I have it. So you just never know. But like that's the thing that what did it for me was opening up to others, getting honest with myself, and getting involved in a 12-step program.
Do you think you can share a little bit about a 12-step program? I'm not familiar. I've heard of like maybe 10 steps or something. So what do you have to do? Like, no, what are the tasks that you
So it's yeah. So it's like like a couple of 12-step programs is like Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and I got involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And so we have this, when you go through the book with somebody, right, you go through the step work. So it's a 12-step program, right? So there's 12 steps. There's 12 steps that like help you in your recovery. It's like admitting and finding a power greater than yourself. Giving your life to that power, doing some inventory on yourself, sharing it. There's a whole bunch of character defects. You make amends to people. You it's about like taking inventory on yourself, because like we're human, right? So it's not like we're gonna make mistakes again, right? And then like finding time for like prayer and meditation and like helping others, right? Like helping others, that's step 12 basically. To sum it up, is helping others. So what it is you come into the program, and you get really involved in the program, and like I asked that guy to sponsor me, and he's a legit sponsor, and we go through the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you read the book, and when it asks you to do something, you stop and you do it, and like that's how you go through the steps. Yeah, so there's 12 steps to it, and it's a life changer.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Um, and then how about working with youth part of it? Like you mentioned that you are working for the city, and then how do you think it's helping you to maybe give back to the youth and the community, and then sharing your story? Like, do you think that's one of the tools for you to kind of overcome the challenges that you had?
Yeah, absolutely. So it helps me big time, because one of the things that we say in the programs too is like you can't keep it unless you give back, right? Like you have to give it away to keep it, and I feel like that's what it is like especially like with the youth in the city, and doing the work like that is it's very touching, like in my heart, right? And like knowing that I'm giving back to the community, and I'm helping out and trying to help others, and especially youth, right? And when you have somebody that like I've spoken to kids, and they're like, hey Eric, I want you to know that like I'm really listening when you're talking, like you've helped me, but that's a game changer. Like that's what life's about. Like that's how I live, because I was a taker for so long, and now I live my life on like, how can I be useful? How can I be helpful to others? Right? Like that's genuinely how I live my life. And it's just, it's like when I share and when I help somebody, like it's weird, because like they say, when you come into this program, right? Like like you have other people coming up to you, trying to help you, and then you get to a place where you're the one that's going up and trying to help people, right? So it's like, and that's the most gratifying thing that I've had in my whole recovery, is like being able to like help others, and having that feeling of like being useful, and doing it, like doing good in life, rather than like doing negative things, what I was used to in the previous years.
Do you use, or like these organizations that you've helped or you worked with, do they come back to you some point and they say thank you, or appreciate you in a way, like expressive way?
Yeah, all the time, and it's beautiful. It's very rewarding all the time. Whether it's youth, whether it's adults, whether it's like I've seen inmates in the jail that like I've went to commitments and shit at the jail. I've seen them on the streets, and they do. They're like a lot of them. They always come up and hey, thanks for sharing, and that was super helpful. And even like people in recovery would be like, hey, I don't know if you remember, but when I was newly sober, like simple stuff, you were very nice to me, or you were very inviting, and like it goes a long way. Like you never know what somebody's going through, right? Like you just never know, and like just being a little, you don't even got to be like crazy, like just being a little kind, right? A little compassionate, a little kind, and like inviting to somebody, it goes a long way.
So when we are talking about this topic, my book, A Gift from Adversity. I think I mentioned a little bit with you before the podcast. So I was a founder and president of the organization nonprofit 501c3 called Genuine Voices. And then Genuine Voices was my brainchild, which lasted about 12 years. And then we taught music in juvenile detention centers across the Massachusetts and then Washington State as well. And then one of it, as you mentioned, sometimes sharing your own personal story with the youth, um, kind of open up. It's almost like, oh, I smell like you. Oh, you get it. Like, you understand. And then that itself alone, because you're adult and I'm an adult and to youth, that's huge. And then, being honest, you said one of the tools that you used was you got honest and you were not afraid to a judgment. And then you were available and then present for the kids who are going through this. Now, I just want to quickly share it with you and then our audience that one of the youth that we mentored or taught music got out from the detention program. This was 2013, and I got an award from Boston Celtics called Heroes Among Us. I got 4 tickets, and I invited him. Gave him 1 ticket. His mom dropped him off at my place. We had a chauffeur. Uh, Suburban, like amazing car, and then we sat behind the CEO of the Celtics. And then the owner of Celtics came up to us, and congratulated me. Got an award. I got 17,000 people standing ovation. When I talked to this individual when he was 16, hey, someday you're gonna be like I am right now. That someday you might be getting this award. I told him. And then last year, I didn't tell many people, but I'm a single mom. I'm struggling financially. This kid who was locked up that I invited to this award ceremony reached out to me and then asked my cash app. I'm like, okay. He cashed out me $300, and that helped my son's ski lift in the winter because he wanted to go ski club. It was $300. So I said, thank you so much for sponsoring my son's ski club. It was so beautiful. I cried because you never know. Years later, that these kids grow up and turn around, and then when you are going through stuff, that they came to rescue me. It was just miracle. It was just such
Love
a rewarding moment. And then you would never expect by sharing your story and in love and compassion to these individuals, youth, especially our next generations. To me, these kids, including yourself when you're youth, including yourself, myself, that situation happened, the obstacle was were like larger than what you could handle,
Mm.
my situation included. But then there are so much obstacles such as law enforcement, school, judgment, and social norm that you are fighting for. And especially, I would have to say, you being a white male, and then people expecting you to be perfect and then privileged, that might have played a big role of you not getting a fair judgment to your situation. I'm not sure. But what I'm saying is that we all have to fight and overcome the expectation of stereotype of either criminal or drug addict, that no, it's something behind or deep inside that's hurt, that's really soft, that people didn't delicately care for.
Mhm.
And so you being a part of kind of eggshell and then protector for these people used to be able to be sharing the story of vulnerable, that is a lot.
It's true. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. Uh, That's amazing. Yeah, you never know what people how they're gonna grow up or how you affect somebody's life, or really just what people have going. Like I used to always take like I would take everything so personal, right? Be in traffic and you beep at somebody and they give you the finger and I'd want to fight them, right? Like it's like that person doesn't even know me. I don't know that. You know what I mean? Like it's like, but I would be so like that would ruin my day, right? That would ruin my day because I wasn't comfortable with myself, right? I wasn't cool with like who Eric was, you know. And you hear these stories about like people giving back and like people having like these adversities happen, like you know, and like you're open about yours, and I appreciate that, you know, and like to be like where we are with like the things that have happened and not be like bitter towards the whole world, that's amazing, right? Like to not be like upset, like this happened to me. Oh, you know, like that's amazing in itself. And you're right, like I'm sure absolutely like there was like some sort of like privilege or like, you know, like, oh, this guy couldn't have had it too bad. He's a white guy from ever. You know what I mean? Like whatever, you know, like and I used to like think those things about people too, like you know, oh, this person got it made because of the job they have, or like whatever, the celebrity, or they got so. But you don't know what's going on inside somebody. You don't know, you know what I mean? You don't know like what that person's feeling, how they, like you see, like celebrities commit suicide, and like they're humans too. Like people have like life hits you, right? And you don't know which way it's gonna hit you sometimes, and I think like the main thing that I try to focus on is just trying to like be present and be available today and be able to help out in any which way that I can.
Very beautiful. Yes, I remember I was a motivational speaker for women who got out of prison, and it was through the nonprofit called Team. And then when I was sharing about my adversity being homeless, and one of the, I think, women said to me that, "Oh, I didn't think Asian people would go through that." And I'm like, "Yeah, I think the misconception is that whether you're Asian or white, the adversity will never discriminate people."
Right.
And you never know, like you said, the celebrity like Twitch, you know, like people commit Robin Williams, like, you know, in the midst of very successful career that people would have never expected that them to be so broken.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate it. One of the other thing that I wanted to mention, that one of my karate master Christopher Rappold told me one time when I was venting about like my life problem. He said, stop dramatizing the trauma. And that was very impactful. You're good at, you can't dramatize. And then that's another thing, that adversity happens and then it kind of becomes like a monster and it occupies your brain, and then you are like this one of the victim thinking, and like, you know, the guy flipped on me, like, you know, whatever, you know, road rage. But you don't have to dramatize, and that's one of the lessons that I've learned that I wanted to share with you and then others as well.
It's true. Like we don't have to like I do it, you know, I tend to make things a lot bigger than what they are sometimes. You know, something's just so simple and I make it like this huge problem and like whatever, or because it's hard when you know you've been doing things a certain way, right? Like even being in recovery for 6 years, right? Like I still like I'm not like I'm far from perfect, right? Like I'm because think about all the time, like I still make mistakes, you know, a lot, right? Like think about all the times that like I wasn't like living like, you know, I was putting substances in my body. I was living, you know, that jail mentality, you know. So it's hard to like just walk away from all of that, especially even like with 6 years in recovery. It's just, you know, it's not like I just snap my fingers and like, oh yeah, right, year 4, you're gonna become the most like peaceful, serene person. It's not reality. You know, it's work. It's a lot of work, you know, and it's hard to like not, you know, take everything personal or think somebody's out to get you or when you've been thinking like that, you know. But when you I think it's like one of those things that when you start to notice, like at the beginning, right, I would start to notice this change in these little, like you count the little wins, the little ones, because they eventually add up to big ones, right? So I would think of like these things and like, wow, well, this happened. That's great. And like I would become like almost addicted to that. Let me see how much better I could feel. Let me see what else I can do, right? Let me see where else I can go, because you never know. Like it's never too, I just turned 40 years old. Age is nothing. You're never too old to do whatever you want to do in life, or like you never know where your life's going to take you.
Thank you very much. So, Eric, my last question for this podcast is a gift that came from the adversity. So, can you please tell our audience what was the gift that came from your adversity?
Oh, that's a great question, because I would love to just, there's multiple gifts. Like the fact that I could like live as a productive member of society, and even like this, if I could just sum it up to the most simplest but most beautiful gift, having a sense of ease and comfort that everything's going to be okay. Having like that peace inside of myself. That's the biggest, like if I can, but I couldn't even, it's a whole nother show to talk about all the gifts. It's because it's wild, right? Because the people in my life, my job, like the relationships that I have with these people, the way that I feel on the inside, there's been so many gifts, and I still feel like it's only the beginning. But if I was to sum it up to like the biggest gift that I feel, it is definitely like having that ease and comfort and that peace of like everything's gonna be okay with me.
Beautifully said. So, I have a surprise uh, for you, that also for the guest. Um, if you uh, think of yourself young back in the days, and if some of the listeners of this podcast are going through the same challenges right now, what is your biggest advice?
Keep going. Keep going. There's light at the end of the tunnel. Just keep going. Like no matter, keep going. Be open. Talk to others. Right. Like try to get some help, but keep going. Like so many times that I wanted to give up and I never thought I would make it out, and like this is never gonna get better. My life sucks. Whatever. Excuse my language. You just gotta keep going, because failings are just failings. They're not permanent, and they're gonna change. Like even the way I feel now, I could feel totally different in 10 minutes. You just got to keep going and be your biggest cheerleader. Be your biggest cheerleader. Know that like you could do it. You could do it. Have that mindset, and really just like have the mindset of like, nothing can stop me. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna push through this, and don't let anybody take you down. Just keep pushing forward.
It was very beautiful interview. Thank you very much, Eric, for coming to A Gift from Adversity, episode 152.
Thank you for having me, Jerry. This was amazing. I appreciate it. I appreciate everything that you're doing here. This was great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And have a great night, everybody. Thank you.
Have a great night.